Hello and welcome everybody to our webinar, which is going to update you on the latest status of our EtherHaul 8010FX. My name is Shimon Hochbaum. I'm Director of Product Management at Siklu, and I will be presenting this webinar today. In terms of the agenda, we are going to review first the main changes about the 8010FX, and we will talk a little bit about how the 8010FX is now ordered and delivered, and we will complete with a Q&A session. During the webinar, we will also conduct a few polls in order for me to understand what are your expectations, and we're actually going to start with one of the first polls right away in order for me to understand which of you have already experience with the 8010FX, and what are your main applications. Are you using the 8010FX for internal connectivity between your point of presences, your own sites, to connect customers, which are maybe business or residential, or because you are in the business of carrier applications? I'm going to let the poll run for a few more seconds, give everybody an opportunity to provide one or more answer. Okay, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you everybody who responded. I'm going to close the poll now. Let me see if I can share the result. So we see that the most common applications are internal connectivity between sites on your network, or connectivity of business sites, as well as application in carrier. Interesting mix of applications. So I'm going to try now and present to you where we are with 8010FX. So the main features which we are introducing today with the 8010FX and the software release 10.2 are the ability to order the radios not just with 10 gigabit of capacity, but also with 2 or 5, and to upgrade all the way to 10 gigabit when your network needs the additional capacity. You also have a choice of channel bandwidth, so not only the full 2000 megahertz, but also some narrower channels, and we'll talk later when that would be an advantage. The 8010FX radios are now QOS-aware, which allows maintaining quality of service in your network when it is important. In case some of your applications or some of your customers demand an added layer of security, the links can now be encrypted with AES. And we are also adding a dual-step transmit power control feature, which will allow maintaining 5 nines availability for and 10 gigabit of capacity, even in very short links. So that are the main new features. We are now going to review the 8010FX itself. So starting with the EH-8010FX and its most important feature, it's a millimeter wave radio. It is the leading radio performance on the market with 64 dB of system gain at 10 gigabit full capacity. And if you want that in link budget with the antennas, it can be all the way up to 164 dB of link budget. The EH-8010FX is also the only radio on the market which has both 10 gigabit on the fiber port, but also 10 gigabit on the copper port with an RJ45 interface. And this allows very easy transition from any 1 gigabit or 2 gigabit scenario to with one of our previously existing radios to the full 10 gigabit gracefully on any cabling that you may have, fiber or copper. And we have now added the options for scanning the capacity from 2 gigabit all the way to 10 and adding encryption for those links where it is important. The main application for the EH-8010FX is, according to the poll result, a connection between any two of your sites where you would have probably a core site and maybe another site where either two switches or two routers would be located, and you would expect a fiber connection to run between these two sites. When the fiber connection is delayed or not available at all, then you can simply replace the fiber link with our EH-8010FX radios and achieve exactly the same performance, the same capacity, all that with awareness to the quality of service. In terms of radio, we already spoke about the 64 dB system gain. Obviously, it operates in the 70 and 80 gigahertz with channel bandwidth starting at 150, 500, 1250, and 2000. That may be important when you have a number of links on the same site and you want to basically make these links operate almost in the same directions. In that case, you might have to select different types of different frequencies. If you need a full 10 gigabit, you have two frequencies and two modulations, that 4 links in the same directions. But sometimes you need even more, and in that case, you would have to, in order to get more channels pointing into the same direction, then you would need narrower channels, which is possible at 1250 or 500 megahertz. The capacity options are 2, 5, or 10, different price points with the different capacities, but also in case of a carrier application, limiting the capacity to below 10 gigabit can be the way to meet your service requirement with the carrier customer. And you have now also an option to provide encryption of the radio in case your customers, sometimes business customers or I would say a government organization may require encryption on top of the radio link. And last but not least, the dual-step transmit power control feature, which allows maintaining 5 nines availability at full capacity on very short links. If we look a little bit at some more details on the radio performance, you have here more information. We spoke about the 10 gigabit performance with a 2000 megahertz channel and 164 dB of link budget with the full capacity 193 dB, which is the link up in case of a heavy rain event at reduced capacity. And we are showing here on the chart additional numbers, for example, the ability to get a link up at full capacity 2 gigabit with 175 dB on the 2-feet antenna, and maintain the link up with a lower capacity at 197 dB. So you have quite a number of options for the capacity that you need and the link budget, depending on the size of the antenna and the distances that you're going to want to cover. So another important feature of the 8010FX, it's quality of service awareness. If you look at the basic building block of the switch, or of the radio, sorry, you have a 10 gigabit port, which is here shown on the block diagram, and basically connecting either the fiber or the copper port into the switch, and from the switch to the modem and the antenna on the right. There is obviously a controller which is built into the radio, and an optional 1 gigabit port. But what we have also added now between the switch and the antenna is a QoS engine. The QoS engine is available on all the radios which are revision B1 and above. We have 8 classes of service which can be identified looking either at layer 2 information, the P bits in the VLAN tag, or looking at the DSCP code in the IP layer. And if your network is running traffic at layer 2 or managing the quality of service at layer 2, you can choose the first option. If your network is it's managing the quality of service at the IP layer, then you would use the DSCP code options. And either way, the radio is fully aware of the quality of service of the traffic. And for example, in case of a lower capacity on the radio, maybe you have started at 2 or 5 gigabit, but you still have the 10 gigabit ports. So momentarily, the traffic coming into the radio could be higher than the capacity of the link. And the QoS engine on the 8010 will prioritize the important traffic and will drop the lower priority if that would be needed. You can also prioritize a number of control protocols or slow protocols on your network, which can be used to maybe manage the routing algorithm or some Metro Ethernet Forum OEM control frames, which is important to keep on the network with the highest availability. So these can be prioritized automatically regardless of whether you choose to operate your network in layer 2 or layer 3 QoS. And in the switch, we still have this 1 gigabit port, which is capable of doing drop and insert, management, and also power over Ethernet into the radio. In terms of management, we assume again the basic reference configuration, and we have a number of options to manage the 8010FX. So first of all, obviously, you know all our EtherHaul radios have a built-in web server which allows basically end-to-end graphical management of a link, but there is also a command line interface, SNMP, syslog. All these are still available on the 8010FX, no changes. And the user rights can be administered locally in the radio or centrally with Radius and TACAX servers. So far, the 8010FX management system worked in an IPv4 space. We have now added the ability to manage the 8010FX with IPv6 addresses. It is still full in-band and out-of-band And here you see on the chart an inbound application where the management traffic are coming on ETH2, and they can be tagged to isolate between the management traffic and the regular customer traffic. We're going to be talking now about the different ways you can order and get delivery of the 8010FX, which are changing from what has been available before. So the first thing to remember, we are now introducing these pay-as-you-go capacity options. You can order the 8010FX with 2, 5, or 10 gigabit from your distributors, from Siklu, and you can upgrade as you wish from 2 to 5 and 10, or from 5 to 10 when necessary. These upgrades from 2 or 5 to 10 are field upgrades. There are now different or new part numbers for these capacity upgrades, which are all following a very specific pattern. It's EH-UPG for upgrade, 8010-CCC for the current, -UUU for the upgrade capacity, and that makes it very simple for the end user to decide what kind of upgrade they want. They may be at 2 gigabit and want to order the 5 gigabit only, or the full 10, or they may be at 5, and whether they ordered the 5 from factory or they upgraded a little bit later and want to go all the way to 10. And if we look at this now in terms of list prices, all the distributors will be able to provide you the list prices or your discounted prices depending on your arrangements. But as a hint, you can see that the 2 gigabit capacity is in the range of an EH-8010FX loaded with 2 gigabit. The 5 gigabit capacity is in the range of the 5500, and the 10 gigabit capacity obviously is the same price as you have known so far. Nothing has changed. When you want to do this, so one thing to pay attention is that this means that you can today get basically an 8010FX at 2 gigabit for about 25-26% less than you were paying so far, but it's only the 2 gigabit capacity, not the full. And if we look at the different upgrades, you will see that by the time you have added all the different upgrades, if you started at 2 or at 5, you are going to be paying 10% more than you would have paid for the 10 gigabit capacity out of the gate. So we are giving different options for people to decide how they want to manage basically the capacity and the path to 10 gigabit, either out of the gate or order the 10 gigabit with the radio as it was done so far, or progress slowly because of the additional steps. It's going to cost a little more. In terms of part numbers, there are 2 part numbers for the no encryption version, and you can obviously choose you want the capacity at 2, 5, or 10. The distributors are going to show that a little bit different on the ordering systems, and basically you will receive a box showing no capacity together with a license file, which you will receive most likely via email. Same applies for the AES model. It's a different model to get the AES encryption, but you can get the AES-based model or the AES-capable model with 2, 5, or 10 gigabit, similar principles as what we have seen before. And you have here a better view into the label, which is going to be on the side of the box, clearly identifying that there is no capacity built into the radio from now on. So if we want to see again, what are the main features of the EH-8010FX, we talked about the leading system gain for the 10 gigabit at 64 dB. We talked about the ability to operate a radio with fiber or with copper port for the 10 gigabit or the lower speeds. And we talked about the scalability of the performance, the QoS engine, and the AES. We are going to proceed next with the Q&A. However, I would like to maybe launch another poll here and see what are the features which you think are going to matter most for the audience here in the way you are going to use the EH-8010FX going forward. You can choose any of the options which apply. So I see that quite a number of folks have voted already. Again, you can check more than one option. I'm going to give it a few more seconds. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Thank you very much. I'm going to close the poll now. Let's see if I can share the results. So we can see that a good number, one of the preferred features is the choice of capacity, as well as the choice in channel bandwidth. Thank you very much for this information. And I'm now going to open the session to the Q&A. I'm going to look at the questions which were asked during the presentation, and it's also a time if you want to ask some more questions. Okay, so the first question which has been asked is do we still keep full capacity when AES is enabled? And the answer is yes and no. Yes, because we still keep the 10 gigabit capacity on the radio itself. We don't change anything there. However, AES encryption or any type of encryption in general has some type of overhead, and we have so every Ethernet frame which is sent along the radio is padded with a little bit of additional information for the AES encryption to work. It's with the EH-8010FX, it is currently 24 bytes, which are added to every frame. A short frame, a long frame, 24 bytes are added on every frame which is sent. So that if the frames are really short, that can be a little bit of overhead. If the frame are 500 bytes and more, which is more typical mix of frame length, that's probably negligible. I see that there is another question here related to power over Ethernet. So power over Ethernet on the 8010FX is doable. Actually, power in general, maybe I should start from there, is doable in two ways. One, there is a direct DC input port which is available, plus and a minus, 48 volt. It's polarity insensitive and grounding level insensitive, so you can, you have to put, you can put the ground to the plus or to the minus, and the radio has a floating input, so it does not really matter. ETH1 port, which is the 1 gigabit port, is also power over Ethernet capable. So if you want to use if you have an Ethernet switch which can deliver 50 watt of power over the gigabit port, that's fine. If you don't have such a switch, we at Siklu provide a choice of injectors for indoor and outdoor use, AC or DC power, which you can use to inject power over the 1 gigabit port. And if you connect the 8010FX with both PoE and DC input, then you get a redundant power configuration. Another question here from somebody who is probably new: is the 8010FX ready to sell? Yes, we've been selling the 8010FX since June of last year, 2018. Globally, in the US, in Latin America, in some selected countries, in Europe, also in selected countries, in Africa, in Asia, in quite a number of places. For some specific opportunities, we have translated the documentation, data sheets, graphical user interface in additional languages such as German, Spanish, Japanese, and we can do additional languages if it would be needed. See here another question which is from somebody who is an existing customer, related to the fact that we have a 2 gigabit capacity, but we also have the EH-2500 family of radios, the EH-2200, 2500, which are 2 gigabit capable as well. So we do not intend to discontinue the 2200 or the 2500 series of radios. The reason is we think that these are different types of radios for different types of customers. The 2500 and 2200, for example, will support timing synchronization along the network with 1588 or SyncE. They have, because they are also designed to be located at the very edge of the network, they have more than one port for the traffic, actually up to 4 ports of traffic, 2 gigabit, 4 ports of 1 gigabit. 2 of them are fiber, 2 of them are copper, which allows different configurations in the network. And so we see them with whereas the 8010 is more of a core device. But some networks start run their coordinate links, at different capacities. So we offer a choice of capacities. So no, we are not going to do any end of life on the 2500 radios. Another question here about AES is AES a software option. So no, again, maybe it was not clear, but AES is not a software option, like some of our other radios. On the 8010FX family, we run capacity at wire speed. 10 gigabit is quite a lot of packets if they are very short, and that's only doable in hardware. And in order to do both the full wire speed and the quality of service, we are doing the encryption in hardware, so that's a little bit expensive. And there are basically two different platforms, one for the non-AES capable version and one part number for the AES capable radio. And let me see if I can bring the specific slide showing the different part numbers. Okay, so here you have it now. So you have basically a pair of radios for the transmit high, transmit low without encryption on the top, and a pair of radios for the transmit high, transmit low, and AES. You see the -A in the part number. So that's the radios which are enabled with AES hardware and software already. I see here a question about distances, and because it's asking about core and far end, I'm not sure I understand. So maybe it's two questions in the same question, in fact. So on the one hand, I would say that there is the wireless link itself, which I'm going to try and show you a chart here. So what you see here, in case it's not visible on the left, it's basically almost 2 kilometers. It's 1.9 kilometer in zone K, I believe, with 99.95% availability. So that's what you can achieve with just a 1-foot antenna. If you go with a 2-foot antenna, you can go above 2 kilometer links. And if you want to check the specifics of how far can you go with what type of antenna, 2 feet, 1 foot, or half or 16 centimeter large antenna, the best is to go to our link budget calculator. It's siklu.com/LBC for link budget calculator. There you can select the type of the radios, 8010FX in this case. You can select the capacity and the channel bandwidth that you want to operate the link, the choice of antenna, as I said, the 16 centimeter, 30 or 60 centimeters, and then the location of the link can be Paris, London, or coordinates and the length. If you are choosing a specific location, you can say 1, 2 kilometers or more, and basically you will get the capacity and the availability of the link for the location or the distances that you want to operate. So a good planning rule is 2 kilometers with the 1-foot antenna and almost 3 kilometers with the 2-foot antennas. But if you want some specifics, you can go on our link budget calculator and check directly. So that's for the wireless link distances. If you want to check what is the distance between the radio and the switch or the router, so that's basically what we have here in the middle, the fiber port or the copper port. Copper is the RJ45 on the left, and fiber is a dual LC connector on the right. So if you want to do with copper, it's going to be a maximum of 100 meter with 10 gigabit on a Cat6A or on a Cat7 type cable. 100 meter is the most that can be done on Cat6A or Cat7 cabling. If you want to go fiber, you have a choice of multi-mode fiber, which is all the way to 300 meters, And if you want to go even further than 300 meters between the rack room or the server room and the radio, then you can utilize the single mode fiber and go all the way to 10 kilometers. So I'm checking if there are additional questions coming in. I see here one question about the capacity and the channel bandwidth. So maybe I can use a slide to explain this. And I think this slide should explain it. So you can see here that you can operate the radio at different channel bandwidth, 250, 500, 1250, and 2000. However, obviously the lower channel bandwidth do not allow the full capacity. Except for the 2000 megahertz, the modulation maximum is at maximum of 32 QAM, with the capacity to 1, 2, or 5 gigabit, depending on the channel bandwidth that is selected on the radio. If you want the 10 gigabit, the only option is to go with the 2000 megahertz channel bandwidth. Okay, and let's see here one more question about the QoS. If we have a 10 gigabit port and if we have a 10 gigabit capacity on the link, is it still needed or is it still advantageous, I guess, to enable the QoS engine? And there is at least one more case where it can be advantageous. It's if the link is rather long, so in the 2 kilometer or 3 kilometer range or more, because we already have some links which are going all the way to 10 kilometers. When there is no rain, you will always get the full capacity. However, if there is rain at 10 kilometers, definitely, but even at 3 and 2 kilometers, the heavy rain can reduce the capacity of the EH-8010FX radio. And in that case, if you have traffic which is important, maybe you have some voice traffic or you have some business customers which are more important than others, then the radio will prioritize the priority traffic and make sure that even though the capacity would be reduced on the radio link, the priority traffic will still be delivered across the radio link. So that is why we recommend that to always enable, or not always, but to most of the time enable QoS. See here another question about transmit power control and capacity. So transmit power control will operate before the capacity is affected when possible. What this means is that we're always going to, the radio is always going to try and maintain the highest available transmit power to basically have the best signal on the far end and allow operation at the highest modulation and the highest capacity. The dual transmit power control feature is used when the link would be very short, and in that case there is a chance of overload of the far end. So now the user would reduce the transmit power to avoid overload in the normal operations of the link. However, reducing the transmit power during normal operation also means that there is reduced dynamic range during a rain event. And what the dual-step transmit power control will do, as soon as the rain event is detected, basically as soon as the remote end will report that the received signal is degraded, the dual step will boost up the transmit power on the near side, which will translate into an improved signal on the far end and ability to maintain the highest modulation, highest capacity most of the time. So first, the transmit power control kicks in, tries to maintain the highest transmit power possible on the link, and if the rain event or the rain density is even higher, then only later will the modulation go down to maintain signal quality on the far end, and it will start reducing the capacity on the link. So transmit power control first and modulation second step. Okay, I see that there are no more questions coming in. Thank you very much for listening in. Before we depart, I'll add that we have registered this session, and we are going to make both the slides as well as the recording and the Q&A session available within a few days. You will receive an email when this is available. Thank you again for participating in the polls, your attendance today, and I hope the EtherHaul will be a very useful product in your toolbox. Thank you and goodbye now.